Good night. We are beginning with the parable of the talents. The reading is taken from Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 to 30. I am reading from the English Standard Version. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one, he gave 5 talents, to another, 2, to another, 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also who had the 2 talents came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here, I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also who had received the 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. What is the background of this parable? You could answer the questions first, and then I will answer second.
The Greek for servant is douloi, which describes a bond slave who is bound to do what he is told to do, regardless of what he thinks about it. They were the property of the master, who had the ability to dispose of them as he pleased. This parable's first 2 servants did as they were directed, while the 3rd servant, despite being bound to follow the master's directives, intentionally refused to follow his orders.
The parable of the talents follows directly the one of the 10 virgins in Matthew. While the parable of the 10 virgins teaches the importance of watching and preparing for the judgment, the parable of the talents teaches the importance of working while watching for the master's return. Like the parable of the pounds, the talents is an exhortation to the followers of Jesus to use the gifts entrusted to them during his absence. Although the parable was spoken primarily to the 12 disciples, the application is for all believers. In the story, a man called his 3 servants to him before he left for a far country. He divided his goods among his servants and gave to each amounts or talents according to his ability. He expected the servants to use the talents and make a profit. A talent in the New Testament was not a coin, but a weight, a sum of money weighing a talent and varying in different nations. The first 2 used their talents well and gained a profit. The master was pleased, commended, and rewarded them. The 3rd servant, however, buried his talents and began to make excuses for his neglect. In addition, he criticized his Lord. The master ordered that the talent be taken from the unprofitable servant and that he be cast into outer darkness. Okay, so who is represented by the businessman and who is represented by the 3 servants?
The businessman represents God, and the 3 servants represents humans. I was thinking they were Christians, but I wasn't sure if they were Christians or just humans.
Yeah, well, I have God, maybe specifically Jesus, but I'm not sure. I believe it might specifically be Jesus because it was like he went and he kept coming back. And I have servants of God. One may have been like a false servant, or like Christians, one may have been like a Christian in quotation mark. Yeah. Yeah, but that's what I have. What is a talent?
A talent is a large sum of money, approximately 6,000 denarii, or 20 years' wages for a laborer.
Okay. I have from the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia. A weight composed of 60 manas, English version of the Bible pounds, equal to about 120 pounds troy and 96 pounds of avoirdupois, okay, or 672,500 grains of the Phoenician standard. When used in the monetary sense, the talent might be either of silver or gold, and the value varied according to the standard. The value of the talents in this story is not known. A talent of silver could run from $1,000 to $2,000. A talent of gold would naturally be much more. On what basis does the businessman bestow his goods upon each of his servants?
The man was to travel to a distant country, and he bestowed his goods to each of his servants based on their abilities.
Right. I have on the basis of their respective abilities. And what do the businessman's servants do with his talents?
The first two servants used their talents wisely and invest them to earn a profit. The servant who was given 5 talents earns an additional 5 talents, while the servant who was given 2 talents earns an additional 2 talents. The third servant, however, does not use his talent wisely. He buries it in the ground and does nothing with it. He returns the 1 talent he was given, explaining that he was afraid to take any risks or invest the talent.
Okay, so the man who had received 5 talents went and traded with them and identified he traded with them and he received 5 talents more. The man who received 2 talents traded and earned 2 more. The man who received 1 talent went and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. And as an aside, did you know that the phrase to bury, you know, you could bury your talent? That's like a phrase that people could use in English.
No,
Okay. Well, the word talent, the way we use the word talent, is actually based on this parable. So the
okay.
modern is like a preacher. He took it to mean that how we could think about our abilities and compare it to the talents in this parable. And that's how we actually have the word talent, which is very interesting. That was John Calvin. How is it that both servants were good and faithful?
The first two servants are praised for being good and faithful, while the third servant was criticized for being wicked and lazy. The reason for this distinction is that the first two servants used their talents wisely and invested them to earn a profit. They showed initiative, creativity, and a willingness to take risks, all of which were qualities that the master valued. They were able to double the amount of talents they were given, demonstrating that they were good stewards of the resources entrusted to them.
Okay. They were both faithful to put the money to work, invested it wisely, and they both got 100% profit based on their trading. And why was the 1 talent man condemned?
He was condemned because he did not use his talent wisely. Instead of investing it or using it to create value, he buried it in the ground out of fear and returned it to his master without any profit.
He didn't make an attempt to increase the money. I believe even if he tried and he failed, he would not have been condemned in the same way as if he just buried it in the ground. He was lazy and he did not have an appropriate amount of respect for his master, because if he did, he would at least have tried to make some sort of a profit. And what is the description of Christ which the 1 talent man gives? And is this accurate?
The man describes his master as a hard man who reaps where he does not sow and gathers where he did not scatter seed. This description implies that the servant saw his master as someone who was harsh and demanding, taking what did not belong to him and expecting a great deal of profit from his servants. This description is not accurate or fair to the master in the parable who represents Jesus. The master had a reasonable expectation of his servants to use their talents wisely and creatively to create value.
The man with the 1 talent described his master as being a harsh man, reaping where he hasn't sown and gathering where he scattered seed. This is not an accurate depiction of Christ. This was rather his way of presenting excuses for his lack of action and his laziness. And what is the difference between Matthew's account of the parable of the talents and Luke's account of the parable of the pounds, or minas, in certain versions of the Bible?
In the parable of the talents, the master gives different amounts of talents to each of his servants according to their abilities. And in the parable of the pounds, the master gives each of his servants the same amount of pounds.
Okay. So first difference, I have a list. The first, in the talents, it was spoken to the disciples. The pounds was this spoken to the disciples and the multitude. The talents was spoken on the Mount of Olives. The pounds was spoken on the road between Jericho and Jerusalem. The talents was spoken on the 3rd day after the entry into Jerusalem. The pounds was spoken just prior to the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. In the talents, the parable of the talents, each servant received an amount of gifts according to his ability. For the pounds, each servant received the same gifts. For the talents, the profits of each servant were in proportion to his gifts. And for the pounds, the profit of each servant was different. For the talents, the rewards for the faithful servants were the same. And for the pounds, the reward for the faithful servants were in proportion to their service and abilities. In the talents, the unprofitable servant lost his gift and was cast into outer darkness. And in the pounds, the unprofitable servant simply lost his gift. Next, what great lessons can be learned from the parable of the talents?
This parable was a message that Jesus directed to the people and how they should live before the Lord returns. The statement in chapter 24, verse 13, "But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved," is a key statement. It refers today to the remnant of people who, because they believe in Jesus, will receive the promised kingdom. Those who had believed in him would be rewarded in his kingdom. Heaven is secure for those who have truly repented and believe that Christ's death pays their sin debt. But the way we live matters. When Jesus returns, we have to give an account of what we have done with whatever he has entrusted to us. Everything we have is a gift from the Lord. Our time, skills, treasures, spiritual gifts, work, relationships, and his word. We need to invest in each of these in a way that will be fruitful to Christ.
Jesus has given each of his followers gifts and opportunities to be used in the service of the kingdom. The gifts have been bestowed in proportion to the ability of the individual believer, and the amount of service required is according to that ability. Luke 12, verse 48 tells us that to whom much is given, much is required. So opportunities plus abilities equals responsibility. Those who faithfully use their abilities will enter into the joy of the Lord, and those who neglect to use their abilities will be cast into outer darkness. You had any questions or comments based on this? I
Kind of. You see, like how okay, the one who didn't do anything with his talents, right? Like he was they say he was cast out in the darkness.
that sounds like hell.
Mm-hmm.
So
isn't
yeah,
is that so like if it is your you repent and you're truly saved, right? But you're doing like the minimum. Like you're not aware of what your talents are and you're not using them.
yeah. I don't know. You see, that's the thing. This parable, it kind of giving you a sense of like a works based righteousness, which is not in keeping with what the rest of the Bible would teach. But I mean, it's like we have to interpret it in line with what the rest of the Bible teaches, which is that we are saved by the grace of God through faith, not works. So I would say that the fact that he didn't do stuff, like he didn't do anything, it was evidence of his lack of faith. It was clear. He made it clear in his explanation that he did not have any kind of good opinion or regard for his master. And that led to the lack of
Yeah,
action
that's true. That's true.
on his part. So if you have any level of faith, it will produce something, you know. I mean, I think the faith grows over time, but some people will have more faith than others, but it wouldn't be nothing at all, and you would be rewarded for what you do. You would be rewarded for what you do, and also the motivation behind your actions as well. But I think, yeah, for him to have to be cast out into outer darkness, it was his heart as well. So his heart just wasn't in the right place. For him to just dig a hole and not even like the master even said, like, they went to trade would have been different. Now they didn't have no Wall Street. Like they had to probably go on journey and do all kind of stuff the first two. But the master would have even accepted the bare minimum from him, which would have been to just go and put it in the bank. That doesn't require any kind of thing. So he didn't do it. He didn't do even the bare minimum, right? So that would say, okay, you just don't care at all. All right. Any other questions or comments based on this?
No.
Okay. You want to choose a psalm or you want me to choose one? Okay. I am reading from Psalm 53. It's a short psalm. The fool hath said in his heart, there is no God. Corrupt are they, and have done abominable iniquity. There is none that doeth good. God looked down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there were any that did understand, that did seek God. Every one of them is gone back. They are altogether become filthy. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. Have the workers of iniquity no knowledge, who eat up my people as they eat bread? They have not called upon God. There were they in great fear, where no fear was. For God hath scattered the bones of him that encampeth against thee. Thou hast put them to shame, because God hath despised them. Oh, that the salvation of Israel will come out of Zion. When God bringeth back the captivity of his people, Jacob shall rejoice, and Israel shall be glad. Amen.
Amen.